Hey Canucks fans, welcome to the line change. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Vancouver Canucks being back on the ice out at UBC. At least some of them were out on the ice. They're back in Vancouver, and a lot of the media got to talk with the players and see them skate, as well as be back on the ice after what feels like was a super long offseason. Things are starting to ramp back up when it comes to the season. Obviously, training camp is still a couple weeks away, but then shortly after training camp, literally one day after training camp, the preseason starts for the Vancouver Canucks. So we're going to go over an article from our friends at Canucks Army who were out at UBC to see the players, talk with them, and we're also going to talk about Evander Kane talking to the media out at UBC after the skate. We're going to talk about that. But before we do that, as I always do, I want to give a shout out and thank you to my sponsor, Gassy Jack Art, maker of this amazing artwork and absolutely incredible artwork. I can't say or gush enough about it. You guys can check him out yourselves at gassjackart.com. You guys can also find him on Instagram at gassjackart. There's a link to his website in the description down below. So without any further ado, let's take a look at this article. As I mentioned, written by our friends at Canucks Army, in particular, written by our good friend David Quadrelli, friend of the podcast, friend of the show. He goes on to say some familiar faces were on the ice out at UBC today. This is, of course, yesterday. As Vancouver Canucks players have begun to arrive back in town, it was a decently sized group on the ice today. Here were some of the players we saw: Elias Pettersson and Elias Pettersson. So both EP40 and DPD were there. Brock Besser, Evander Kane, Vitaly Kravtsov, Jonathan Lekaramaki, Marcus Pettersson, Kirill Kudratsev, Nikita Tolopilo, Arshdeep Bains, Kevin Lankinen, Thatcher Demko, Tom Wielander, Vilmer Ulriksson, Derek Forbart, Philip Hronik, and Pierre-Olivier Joseph. The group did some rush drills as they were joined by goaltending coach Marco Terenius and skills and skating coach Jason Krog. Following the on-ice session, newcomer Evander Kane spoke to assembled media for about 5 minutes, and he would talk about the opportunity to get to know teammates having arrived early. Evander Kane would go on to say, "I think it's a really good opportunity to do that, because I know when we go up to Penticton, you have that downtime and that free time to kind of get to know guys more, go for lunches, go for dinner. So I think that's a nice foundation to kind of start from. And then obviously once you get on the ice, building chemistry with guys on the ice and integrating your game with other people's games, I think will help early to hopefully start the season off well." And he would also go on to talk about his early impressions of the group, at least those that he's met so far. We have a lot of young guys. We have a lot of guys, especially at the bottom of our lineup, that are trying to establish themselves and showcase themselves, probably starting in training camp and try to build off what they did last year. So I think that type of competitiveness as a group will probably help us as we move on into the regular season. He would also talk about the forwards specifically. I think we're a team that's going to work really hard. I think we have some great skill up front. Obviously, you got PD, running down the middle there, and he looks like he's coming to the season, with a bit of a new look and probably a slightly different attitude, which is obviously going to bode well for us. And it's going to start with him, and it's going to be on everybody to help him out and, produce offensively at a high level with our entire forward group. So as you see there, Evander Kane specifically mentioning Elias Pettersson, and Evander Kane himself, obviously we've heard, we've talked a lot about PD over these last few weeks and, talked about how his offseason has gone, how he's, put on some muscle, he's skating really well from that article from his Swedish skills coach, talking about how PD's been looking. And even Evander Kane himself is saying that he's come in with a bit of a new look and probably a slightly different attitude, which is huge because remember all the way back when we first talked about, PD and his struggles, PD admitted that he probably didn't have the right attitude going into this past season, and after he signed that big new contract, he admitted he did not have the right attitude. And Evander Kane here is saying that PD is looking like he's got a different attitude. So, which is, really great to hear. And especially hearing it from, okay, I don't really want to call him an outsider, but you guys know what I mean. Technically an outsider looking in and coming into a new team. Evander Kane is even saying that. With the Jake Milford Canucks Charity Invitational Golf Tournament set for next Monday, the Canucks players will continue their preparation over the next 2 weeks as training camp in Penticton kicks off on September 18th. The Canucks play their first of 6 preseason games on Sunday, September 21st, the day after training camp ends, when they take on the Seattle Kraken in Seattle. Canucks' regular season opens at home against the Calgary Flames on October 9th. And that is the end of the article. But we have a couple other things I wanted to go over. We're going to look at something from Canucks News Summaries that goes into a little bit more about what Evander Kane said. And in particular, the getting to know his teammates part. He did go on to say he only really knew Myers, but has gotten to know other guys over the past couple of days. He mentions, it's a good opportunity to build relationships before the season starts, as we mentioned in the Canucks Army article. And he even goes on to talk about, being back home in Vancouver and, saying he likes the convenience of having a lot of his life already set up in Vancouver. Knowing the city and having a lot of friends makes the transition easier. He can focus on hockey. And of course, he also mentions having a really young team and there's a lot of energy. Then, as we mentioned, he talks about Elias Pettersson. We already mentioned, he's come in with a new look and a slightly different attitude. We already covered that. We also covered, him saying that the scoring starts with PD and it's on everyone to help him out. Talks about how he skates really well and can handle the puck through the neutral zone. And he also talks about how it's important for Kane himself to create space for Elias Pettersson in the neutral zone and off the rush. Talks about letting Pettersson's attributes make your own better, finding the right spot, and getting open. He also says, obviously want to play with the best players and anticipates that's going to happen at some point. He also would talk about his early impressions. We already talked about him saying guys at the bottom of the lineup showcasing themselves. And also, it looks like there's a bit of a couple jokes. Evander Kane made some jokes. He was asked about playing 1,000 games. He mentions that it will mean something. It's a shorter list of players to do than you think, and also having a chance to do it in front of his friends and family makes it extra special. Someone jokingly asked him about, 350 career goals and hitting that target, and he would, joke himself saying, he'll try to get 400 goals. And he even actually said, I don't know who asked him this, but he even said, why set the bar so low? Evander Kane is currently at 326 goals. So, hey, if he can get to 350 this year and impresses and signs I don't want to say long-term, but mid to long-term, like if he extends with the Canucks, then yeah, maybe have 400 goals as a goal. And he also says he always wants to score as much as you can each year. So that's some more from Evander Kane. Obviously, we talked about the jokes, that he had some other jokes. And actually, there's a video of this that you can find on the Canucks' Twitter or X account where he's being interviewed and you hear pucks bouncing off the glass, kind of, interrupting him speaking. And you see him kind of look over and kind of, give it to his teammates a little bit, saying, somebody can't hit the net. And then you see him kind of like lean back and go, hit the net, and I thought that was hilarious. That, Evander Kane, he's not afraid to speak his mind. We all know this. And, I hope we see more of that throughout the season. So that is the Vancouver Canucks being back on the ice, just a little update, and also a little bit about Evander Kane talking to the media for about 5 minutes, and talking about his teammates and how he's become a part of the group, and he's still meeting his teammates. He mentions he already knew Myers previously, but I just thought this was great to see. Obviously, Canucks fans are eager for the season to start, myself included, and it's just great to have hockey back now that it is officially September. Obviously, we're still a couple weeks away from training camp and whatnot, so we will have slightly a bit more tidbits. Obviously, not all the players are back in town, just a select few, but obviously over the next few days, few weeks, or actually I guess over the next week or so, more and more Canucks players will be back in town, including Quinn Hughes, who we just spoke about in that video from that interview that he did with Ian McIntyre. But I want to know what you Canucks fans think. What do you guys think about the Canucks being back on the ice at UBC? What do you guys think about this Evander Kane media scrum where he talks about his teammates, cracks some jokes, kind of makes fun of his teammates a little bit, and has a little bit of fun, talks a little bit about PD and what he's seen. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. And as always, if you guys like this video, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to stay up to date on all your Vancouver Canucks content, be sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a single video. You guys can find and interact with us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, as well as Blue Sky. Blue Sky is not listed there, but you guys can find us on Blue Sky at The Line Change, and feel free to give us a follow on all of our social media platforms. If you prefer an audio version of this podcast, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. On Spotify, feel free to give us a follow, as well as rate and review us. It is, of course, greatly appreciated, and it really helps out the podcast on Spotify. But that's going to do it for me. As always, let's go Canucks, and I'll see you guys in the next video.